Her hands were cracked from years of bleach and boiling water. Her back ached with the weight of forgotten dreams. But today was supposed to be different. Carolyn Miller stood in the sunlit crowd, heart pounding with pride, eyes searching for her son. She had sold her wedding ring just to afford the bus ride here. And then he saw her, and he laughed like she was nothing. And what he said next, what he did next, was so cruel, so humiliating, the entire world turned to watch. You think you've seen ungrateful children before? You haven't seen this. If this story touches something deep in you, don't just scroll, like, comment, and subscribe. Let more people know the truth about silent sacrifices. And what happens when love is betrayed?
Carolyn Miller woke before the sun, as she had for the last 20 years. Her apartment was quiet, lit only by the flicker of the hallway streetlight bleeding through slatted blinds. The air was heavy with the scent of old furniture and ammonia. She sat at the edge of her bed, rubbing the joints in her fingers. They had swollen again overnight. Her ankles throbbed. Her back creaked like a rusted hinge. But none of it mattered. Today was her son's graduation. She had saved every spare penny, cleaning houses, scrubbing motel bathrooms, ironing other people's clothes, to make it to this day. She had pawned her wedding band last week to cover the cost of the bus ride and a second-hand floral dress. Her cough rattled in her chest, deeper now than it used to be, but she silenced it with a sip of warm water and stubbornness. Carolyn pressed the fabric of the dress flat, her palms shaking slightly. In the pocket of her coat, she tucked a crumpled envelope. Inside, $20. All she had left. A gift for Ethan. The university lawn was wide and green, flanked by banners and proud parents. Carolyn stepped off the bus slowly. The pain in her legs flared, but she pushed through, leaning on the cane she refused to decorate. Dozens of students posed for photos in glossy black gowns. Families clapped and laughed. Carolyn searched the crowd. Then she saw him, her son. Ethan stood tall in his cap and gown, surrounded by well-dressed friends. He looked so polished, so confident, so far from the little boy who once cried when she left for night shifts. Her heart swelled. She raised her voice, trembling but joyful. "Ethan! Sweetheart!" He turned. For a second, just a second, his expression was blank. Then it shifted. A tight smile. A glance at his friends. Carolyn waved and began limping toward him, her camera in hand. She reached him, breathless but beaming. "Just one picture, darling. Let me see you holding your diploma." His eyes flicked to her shoes. Her faded coat. The camera. "Mom," he said under his breath. "Not now. Just go stand somewhere else." His friends shifted awkwardly. One of them chuckled. Another whispered something behind a manicured hand. Carolyn's heart cracked, but she didn't move. "Please. I came all this way." Ethan snapped the folder from her hands. "You wouldn't understand what this even means." The words were sharp. Public. Cold. Then he flung the diploma folder at her feet. It hit her ankle. Not hard. But enough. Carolyn stood there, stunned. A sharp breath caught in her throat. Around them, conversation paused. People turned. A phone camera gleamed in the sun, already recording. Ethan muttered with an eye roll, "Why do you always have to ruin everything?" His words hung in the air, louder than the band on stage. Her hands trembled. She bent down slowly, picked up the folder, and looked at him one last time. Ethan had already turned away. The folder in Carolyn's hand felt heavier than it should have. As if it carried not just a diploma, but every scraped knee, every unpaid bill, every blistered palm that had led to this day. The paper inside was crisp. Untouched. Untainted. Unlike her. She turned away from the circle of polished smiles and dismissive laughter, her legs stiff and unsteady. Behind her, the celebration surged back to life as if nothing had happened. But she could still feel the sting of every word, the way Ethan had looked at her, as if she were an inconvenience. As if her love, her sacrifices, her entire existence were a stain on his moment of glory. She didn't cry. Not there. Not where people could see. She found a bench beneath a tree, far from the crowd. Her camera dangled useless in her lap. She stared out at the stage, where new names were still being called. Applause followed each one. But the sound no longer reached her. Then came the first stranger. A woman, maybe in her 40s, sat gently beside her. "Ma'am, are you okay?" she asked softly. Her eyes were kind. Carolyn nodded without speaking. But the woman didn't leave. "I saw what happened. My niece recorded it. She said people are already posting it online." Carolyn turned slowly. "What do you mean, recording?" The woman hesitated, then held up her phone. A video began to play. Shaky, grainy, but clear enough. Ethan's voice. His words. The way he threw the folder. The way Carolyn had flinched. The audio caught everything. Someone already posted it with the caption, "Son from hell embarrasses his own mother on graduation day." Carolyn's chest tightened. She wasn't used to being seen. Not like this. Not by strangers. Not by the world. She thanked the woman quietly, rising with effort. Her cane scraped the concrete as she walked back to the bus stop. The diploma remained folded in her arms. She didn't look back. The ride home was long. The driver said nothing as she climbed aboard, though he did glance at the redness on her cheek. Her body ached with every jolt of the road. But her thoughts drowned it out. Why? Why had Ethan changed so much? He used to clutch her hand at parent-teacher meetings. Used to sleep on her lap while she sewed holes in his backpack. She remembered him hugging her leg after his first day of school. How did that boy become this man? She reached her apartment past dusk. The lights were dim. Her worn recliner greeted her like an old friend. As she sat, her cough returned, deeper than before. She placed the diploma folder on the table. Stared at it. Then reached for her phone, her fingers stiff. She opened the video app. It was already there, shared to her inbox by a neighbor's niece. The title now read, "Graduation Day Shame, Son Berates Sick Mother." And the comments. Thousands. That poor woman. He doesn't deserve that degree. My heart breaks for her. She raised him, and he treats her like that? Someone give this mother a medal. Carolyn stared at the screen as her throat tightened. She didn't want pity. She had never asked for attention. But now, the world had seen what she had tried so hard to hide, what Ethan had become. She lowered the phone and leaned her head back. For the first time in years, Carolyn Miller didn't feel invisible. And that terrified her more than anything else. Carolyn didn't sleep that night. The video played in her mind like a loop she couldn't switch off. Not just the words, but the looks. The laughter. The moment Ethan dismissed her like she was nothing more than a broken shadow clinging to his heels. By morning, her eyes were dry, but her heart burned with something new. Not grief. Not yet. Resolve. It started with the door. The front lock had stuck for months, clicking twice before it latched. Ethan still had a key. He had come and gone as he pleased, stopping by for money, a meal, or just silence when his own apartment became too loud. But not anymore. She called Mr. Jenkins, her neighbor across the hall. A retired Marine with a quiet demeanor and steady hands. "Can you change my locks today?" she asked. He didn't ask why. He just nodded. While he worked, she packed a small box with Ethan's leftover things. An old high school medal. A hoodie she had sewn twice. A cracked coffee mug that said, "Number 1 Son." She set it by the door. Mr. Jenkins handed her the new keys with a quiet, respectful nod. "No one gets in unless you let them," he said. That evening, Carolyn walked to the small credit union where she'd kept a joint account, one Ethan had used without asking, draining what little she had. "I need to remove my son from this account," she told the teller, her voice firmer than it had been in years. The teller looked up. "Are you sure, ma'am?" She didn't hesitate. "I'm sure." When she stepped outside, the sky had darkened with heavy clouds. Wind picked up leaves in little circles around her shoes. But something in her chest felt still. Settled. The world had judged her. Had seen her pain. But now, she had to judge herself, what she would allow, what she would stop, and what had to change. The call came that night. Her phone lit up. "Ethan." She stared at it. Then answered. "Mom," he said. His voice was quiet, softer than she remembered. "I saw the video." She said nothing. They revoked my scholarship. The school. They sent an email. Said I violated some code of conduct. I don't know what to do." Still, she said nothing. "Mom, please." "I know what I said. I was just nervous. It was a big day. I didn't mean it." Her fingers clenched around the phone. "I lost my job offer too. They said my behavior reflects poorly on their values. You have to understand, I didn't mean for any of this." She finally spoke. "Ethan," she said, her voice low, steady. "You didn't just ruin a moment. You broke something that was already holding on by threads." He was silent. Then came the shift. "Okay. I get it. You want to punish me. Fine. But I'm your son. I need a place to stay. I need help. You're not coming here." "What? Are you serious? You're throwing me out? After everything you preached about family?" "You threw me away first," she said quietly. His voice rose. "So what, this is your revenge? You're letting strangers tell you what kind of mother to be?" She didn't answer. "You'll regret this," he spat. "You need me more than you think." The call ended. She stared at the phone for a long time. Her body trembled, but not with fear. She wasn't the same woman who had limped across the university lawn, clutching a crumpled envelope and a fading dream. Not anymore. Rain fell in sheets, drumming hard against the windows as if the sky itself had something to say. Carolyn sat in her worn recliner, the diploma folder untouched on the table, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea she couldn't bring herself to drink. The silence of her apartment was no longer the emptiness of loneliness. It had become a wall, a defense, something she finally controlled. She didn't expect him to come. Not that soon. But near midnight, it happened. A pounding fist. Not a knock. Not a call. A demand. "Mom. Open the damn door." Carolyn froze. Through the peephole, she saw him. Ethan. Hair soaked, face twisted with fury. His graduation gown was gone, replaced by a hoodie and the look of a young man unraveling. "You changed the locks? Seriously? You think this is okay?" He kicked the bottom of the door once. It shook in its frame. Carolyn didn't flinch. She stood quietly behind it, not answering. "I need a place to stay. I need my mom, not some internet puppet." A second kick. Louder this time. From across the hall, Mr. Jenkins's door opened. He stepped out in a raincoat, flashlight in hand, expression calm but firm. "Back off, son," he said, voice steady as steel. "She doesn't owe you this." Ethan turned sharply. "Who the hell are you?" "She asked you to leave. Respect that. You don't want this to get worse." Ethan sneered. "Old man, mind your business." But the hallway light flicked on again. Mrs. Alvarez now stood beside her door, arms crossed, silent and watchful. Ethan's eyes darted between them, his bravado starting to crumble. He turned back to the door. "Mom. Seriously. Let me in. I'm your son." Carolyn pressed her palm flat against the wood. She didn't speak. "You're going to regret this," he muttered. "All of you." One final bang, his open palm slamming against the frame, and then footsteps. Angry, echoing, retreating. She didn't move until the footsteps faded completely. Mr. Jenkins knocked gently. "You okay?" "I will be," Carolyn replied. She meant it. Inside, she returned to her chair, lowering herself carefully. Her knees still ached. The cough still lingered. But her heart was no longer bending under the weight of silence and fear. That night, she wrote a letter. Folded it. Addressed it. To Ethan Jackson. Inside, just a few lines. "You are not welcome in this home. Do not return. Do not call. This is the boundary you taught me to draw." The next morning, she mailed it by certified post. Then, she walked slowly, carefully, to the local legal aid center. Mrs. Alvarez had told her about it. There, she updated her will. Every dollar she had left, every item in her name, would now pass to her niece in Portland or to a local women's charity. Nothing for Ethan. She signed the final page with a hand that no longer trembled. Back home, Carolyn opened the windows. The air was sharp with the scent of last night's rain. Her apartment felt different. Not just safer. Stronger. The days turned quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that once filled Carolyn's apartment like a fog. This quiet had edges. It cut through the guilt. It made space for something else to grow, clarity. She moved slower than she used to, but each step now had direction. Her morning routine no longer revolved around what Ethan might need. No more grocery bags set aside. No more emergency cash tucked behind the spice rack. No more waiting. The video kept spreading. It reached news sites, parenting blogs, even opinion columns. Ethan's name trended for 2 days. The graduation boy who shamed his own mother. He tried to make it disappear, of course. But the internet doesn't forget. Carolyn heard whispers in the laundromat. "That poor woman in the video, looks like someone I know. She changed the locks on him. Good for her." Neighbors she barely spoke to before now offered little gestures. A warm casserole left on her doorstep. A card with a handwritten note from the teenage girl upstairs. 2 boys from the building carried her trash down without asking. And then, came the statement. Mrs. Alvarez knocked again. Tablet in hand. "You need to see this," she said. It was from Lincoln State University. A formal release. "Following the recent viral incident involving one of our graduating students, we have officially revoked the Chancellor's Community Values Scholarship from Mr. Ethan Jackson due to conduct grossly inconsistent with the university's code of ethics. Further reviews regarding his academic standing are ongoing." Carolyn read it twice. Her hand didn't shake. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was just truth. Public, unpolished truth. Ethan had shamed himself. And now, the future he had polished for years was beginning to rust at the edges. She thought about the hours she spent scrubbing floors, the nights she walked home with blisters in shoes half a size too small. She thought about standing in the back of school fundraisers, watching other mothers hand out cookies while she worked them up. None of those memories had been painful before. But now, they felt like borrowed time. Wasted on someone who never looked back. She poured herself tea. Opened the window. The rain had stopped. A breeze carried the smell of spring soil and blooming sidewalks. Later that week, she received a letter, an invitation, actually. A local community group wanted her to speak at a support circle for parents. Survivors of adult child abuse, they called it. She almost laughed. She had never thought of herself as a survivor. But maybe that's exactly what she had become. Still, she didn't answer. Not yet. That night, the phone rang. Ethan. She let it ring 4 times before answering. His voice was quieter than before. "Mom," he said. She didn't respond right away. "I got a job. Just part-time. Warehouse. It's hard. The pay is trash. But it's something." More silence. "I'm renting a room now. Some old place with peeling paint. But it's mine." She said nothing. "I know I messed everything up." He didn't cry this time. There was no rage. No apology either. Not directly. Just a heavy, tired pause. "I'm just calling to let you know I'm still here." Carolyn looked out the window. The world outside was quiet. But inside, something stirred. A small, tired flicker. "I hear you," she said. And then, she hung up. The next morning, Carolyn sat by the window with a notepad in her lap. It had been years since she'd written anything by hand, aside from bills and grocery lists, but now, her fingers moved slowly across the page, almost unsure. She wasn't writing to Ethan. She was writing for herself. A list. Not of chores or needs, but boundaries. A map of what would no longer be crossed. No more guilt when she said no. No more hiding pain to spare someone else's pride. No more silence when she needed to speak. The words looked strange at first, like they belonged to someone stronger. But by the time she finished, the list felt real. Like armor. Later, she stood in the mirror for a long time. She took in her reflection, creased lines, hollowed cheeks, the cane leaning against the wall behind her. All of it told a story no one had ever fully listened to. But now they had. Her body carried wounds, yes. But also, proof. Proof of a mother's journey through storms with no umbrella. And now, she no longer stood in the rain. The video had slowed down in shares, but the damage lived on. Ethan's name had become a cautionary tale in lecture halls and podcasts. Entitlement in the age of sacrifice. Some articles used Carolyn's face as their thumbnail. Blurred, but still recognizable. She thought it might bother her. But it didn't. When Mr. Jenkins passed her in the hallway, he paused. "You holdin' up?" he asked. She smiled. Better than before. In the evenings, Carolyn now took short walks with Mrs. Alvarez and a small group of seniors from the building. They walked slowly, shoulders touching, speaking in low voices about grown children, aching joints, and the things time never teaches unless you bleed for it. One evening, a young woman stopped them. She was tall, barely in her 20s, wearing a campus sweatshirt. Are you the woman from the graduation video?" she asked, almost breathless. Carolyn froze. The girl continued. "I saw it with my mom. She cried. Said she never felt so seen. She asked me to say thank you." Carolyn blinked. For a second, she didn't know what to say. "You don't have to thank me," she finally whispered. But the girl smiled. "We already did." That night, Carolyn stood in her kitchen a little longer than usual. She boiled water not just for tea, but for tomorrow's walk. She laid out her clothes, picked the sweater she liked best. The past still pressed into her spine, but it no longer pulled her down. It held her upright. Like roots. Ethan hadn't called again. Not since the night he said he was working. She imagined him now, somewhere in that warehouse, lifting heavy boxes with a back too young to hurt the way hers did. Maybe no one there knew his name. Maybe no one knew what he had done. But he knew. And sometimes, that was the hardest weight to carry. Carolyn didn't pray for him. Not anymore. But she didn't curse him either. Somewhere between the silence and the storm, she had found a place to rest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But a stillness. And sometimes, that was enough. Autumn crept in gently, brushing the sidewalks with golden rust. The city moved slower. Leaves gathered in quiet corners. Children wore jackets. The air felt like memory. Carolyn no longer checked her phone with dread. The notifications had faded. The article shares had dropped off. No more late-night messages from strangers. The world had turned its gaze elsewhere. But she remained in its wake, steady, unchanged, and in many ways, reborn. The apartment felt different now. It wasn't bigger. It wasn't quieter. But it belonged to her again. Fully. Even the smallest sound, the drip of the kitchen faucet, the hum of the old fridge, no longer felt like background noise in someone else's life. She had taken up watering plants on the windowsill. A simple thing. But something to care for that wouldn't take her for granted. Sometimes she wrote letters she never mailed. Not just to Ethan. To herself. To the version of Carolyn who once believed love was enough to shield her from betrayal. Then, one gray evening, the phone rang again. She didn't answer it right away. Let it ring twice. 3 times. Then she lifted it slowly. Hello? There was no outburst this time. No demand. Just a long silence, then a quiet voice. It's me. She knew. I don't have a lot of time, he said. Just a break between shifts. Are you eating? She asked, without thinking. A pause. Yeah. I mean, not great, but I manage. She closed her eyes. I just wanted to say, he stopped. The silence stretched. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed to hear your voice. She let the moment settle. The weight of all the things unsaid between them. Ethan, she said gently. The world saw you at your worst. But it also saw me. He was quiet again. I hated seeing it, he finally said. Not the comments. Not the fallout. You. The look on your face. I keep seeing that. Her voice didn't break. Not this time. You didn't just break my heart, Ethan, she said softly. You broke who I believed you were. I know. Silence again. I'm not good at this, he muttered. I've never been good at this. She almost smiled. Then become good at something else, she said. Start with decency. I'm trying, he whispered. I swear. I'm trying. She didn't say she forgave him. She didn't say she'd let him come home. Instead, she said, I'm listening. And for now, that was the farthest she could reach. When the call ended, Carolyn didn't cry. She didn't sit in silence or stare out the window. She returned to the stove, where her soup was still simmering. She stirred it slowly, then ladled a bowl for herself. She sat at the table, alone, but whole. The echo of her son's voice lingered in the room like the final note of a song that wasn't finished. Not healed. Not repaired. But, reopened. The days that followed blurred into a quiet rhythm. Carolyn no longer woke up with a weight pressing against her chest. Her mornings were slow but peaceful. She brewed her tea, took her medications, and sometimes sat in the living room just listening, to the ticking clock, to the creaks of the floorboards, to the soft breathing of a home at rest. She still hadn't seen Ethan. But the calls began coming once a week. They were short. Sometimes 10 minutes. Sometimes less. He never asked for anything. He talked about his work, about the odd people at the warehouse, the small room he rented above a corner store, the burnt toast he made every morning. He didn't complain. But the exhaustion in his voice told more than his words did. One afternoon, as she returned from the pharmacy, Carolyn found a small envelope taped to her door. It wasn't signed. Inside, a folded receipt from a local food mart. Paid in cash. Along with a single note, scribbled in a familiar handwriting. I remembered you like peach jam. The good kind. She sat with that note in her hand for almost an hour. She didn't call. She didn't write back. But she placed it in the drawer beside her bed, where she kept her wedding photo, a faded birth certificate, and a picture of Ethan when he was 9 years old, grinning with 2 missing front teeth. That evening, she spread the peach jam on toast. The good kind. Sweet, soft, just like she remembered. The phone rang the next morning. "I didn't mean to make it weird," Ethan said, awkwardly. I saw it and thought of you." "It wasn't weird," she replied. They sat in silence for a moment. "I'm not proud of who I've been," he said. "I keep thinking about how I got there. Why I thought any of it was okay." Carolyn looked out the window. A boy on a skateboard zipped by, laughing. The sound felt light. "I think I let myself believe that loving you would be enough to guide you," she said. "But love without boundaries becomes something else. It becomes surrender." He didn't respond. She continued. "I surrendered too much, Ethan. My health. My time. My voice." "I know," he whispered. "I didn't see it. I didn't want to." A beat of silence passed. "I still have the degree," he added suddenly. "I never hung it. Can't even look at it." Carolyn didn't know what to say to that. So she said nothing. Then he asked quietly, "Would it be okay if I sent you something? Not money. Not anything big. Just something I made." "What is it?" "A bench," he said. "Wooden. We started building them in the shop. They let us take scraps. I carved your name on it." She let the thought settle like dust on an old table. "Okay," she said. "You can send it." He exhaled. Just once. After the call ended, she stood in the hallway for a long time. Her hand rested on the inside of the door. Not ready to open it. But no longer afraid to. The bench arrived 3 days later. It came unannounced, left by a delivery driver who didn't even knock. Just a quiet thud outside the apartment door, followed by footsteps fading down the stairs. Carolyn opened the door and stood there, blinking at the wooden piece before her. It was simple. Sturdy. Sanded smooth. The legs were uneven, clearly made by unpracticed hands. But across the top slat, carved gently into the grain, was a name. Mom. She touched the letters with the tips of her fingers. The wood was rough in some places, the grooves imperfect, but it was real. Made with time. With thought. With hands that had once thrown a diploma at her feet. She dragged it inside, careful with her knees. Placed it by the front window, where the morning light came in warmest. Then she sat. The bench creaked softly under her, like it was learning her shape. For a long time, she just sat there, looking out over the quiet street. Children ran past on scooters. A man watered the plants in his windowsill across the way. A breeze carried the sound of distant traffic and someone's music playing faintly. She didn't cry. Not because she had no reason to, but because the moment didn't ask for tears. It asked only for presence. Later, she made tea. Peach jam on toast. Again. She placed the mug carefully on the windowsill beside her. Then she reached for the envelope drawer and removed the photo of Ethan as a child. She placed it beside the toast. That night, she dreamed of nothing. Not of the graduation. Not of the fight. Not even of Ethan. She simply slept. And when the sun rose, casting a soft glow through the glass, the bench greeted her like it had always been there. Part of the room. Part of the healing. The calls continued. Every Saturday, always short. He told her about cutting his hand on a rusted nail, about the warehouse lights flickering like haunted eyes. He told her how he missed her cooking, especially that stew with potatoes and black pepper she used to make on cold nights. "I tried to recreate it," he said once. "Tasted like cardboard and regret." She had chuckled. Just a little. Sometimes, she offered a story in return, about her new walking group, about the cat that kept sneaking into the hallway from downstairs, about a book she found in a free box outside the pharmacy. They didn't talk about the video. Or the scholarship. Or what had been said on that lawn. Some wounds didn't need reopening. They just needed air and time. And air and time were exactly what she had now. That winter, the city saw its first snow in years. Soft flurries drifted past the window as Carolyn sat on the bench, hands curled around a warm mug. She wrapped a blanket over her shoulders and watched it fall. The world beyond the glass kept moving. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel left behind. She simply felt, here. Alive. Spring returned like a soft breath, waking up the ground with tiny green shoots and the hum of bees. The air smelled different. Cleaner. Like it had washed away a layer of bitterness left behind by winter. Carolyn's window bench had become her anchor. She sat there with her tea every morning, watching the street stretch and yawn beneath the sun. The neighbors passed by, nodding at her when they saw her in the window. A boy waved every day on his way to school. Inside, the apartment had changed in subtle ways. The walls seemed brighter. The silence, kinder. She moved with intention now. Folded her laundry while humming. Cooked for herself with care, not just survival. Her cough still flared some mornings, and her knees still rebelled against long walks, but the weight inside her chest had lifted. It had been nearly a year since the graduation. Ethan's calls were more regular now. Not scheduled, but natural. Sometimes twice a week. Sometimes once. He never asked for help. Never brought up the past. Instead, he talked about small things. A dog that followed him home one night. The old man at work who carved birds from scrap wood. The ache in his arms after unloading crates of flour in the rain. And Carolyn listened. Sometimes she gave him advice. Sometimes she didn't. But she always listened. Then one day, he asked something different. "Can I visit?" The words hung between them like steam rising from a mug. She didn't answer immediately. "I won't stay," he added. "Just a visit. Maybe an hour. I just want to see you." She looked down at her lap. Her hands were folded. "Come. Let me think about it," she said. She ended the call soon after and sat in silence. Not from fear. Not from anger. Just consideration. That night, she dreamed of the door. Not the university lawn. Not the cane or the folder. Just the door. And behind it, not Ethan the boy or Ethan the man who had once wounded her, but someone in between. Someone waiting. She woke early. Washed her face. Brushed her hair. And opened the door. Not for Ethan. Not yet. For the breeze. For the day. She let the air roll through the apartment, let it fill the corners that had sat still too long. Then she went to the bench. Saturday. Waited. And when the knock finally came hours later, it was not a pounding. Not a shout. Just a knock. She didn't rush. She stood slowly. Walked to the door. Her hand hovered over the knob for a moment. Then turned. And opened. There he was. Ethan. Taller than she remembered. Thinner. His face was older, sharper. But his eyes. They looked like his father's now. He held nothing but his hands, folded nervously in front of him. He didn't speak. Neither did she. He stepped back slightly, as if giving her the choice. She opened the door wider. Not as an invitation. But as a beginning.